Now, for more on the U.S. markets, let's cross over to our correspondent Natalie Carney in New York. Hello, Natalie. Will the Federal Reserve's decision of keeping interest rates on hold bring more confidence to the U.S. market?
Stocks did tumble on the word that those interest rates would remain as they are until mid-2013. However, there was a rally seen shortly after that.
So how can the U.S. economy get back on its feet given the possible long-term impact, Natalie?
Well, a lot of people are saying that this S&P announcement was more of a sort of a political stab than an economic stab. I mean, they did mention that it was the political paralysis in Washington that led in part to their decision to downgrade the U.S. Credit rating.
Natalie, Secretary of State Clinton denying any military intent against Libya, though certainly reading between the lines, it seems something must be afoot in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, there are some behind-the-scenes talks that have been going on since all these sanctions have been approved, first by the U.S. and, of course, over the weekend by the UN Security Council and today by the European Union. They all want to start implementing a no-fly zone. There's been no decisive decision on that yet, but if that were the case, that would certainly put the pressure on Gaddafi as far as using the methods he has been in trying to suppress the unrest. I mean, a lot of the pressure that he's been putting on the protesters and a lot of the violence is coming from the air.
Doctors at Benghazi's main hospitals say they're terribly short on supplies. Natalie Carney has this report.
The commotion of a busy Benghazi hospital emergency room. The latest victims of the intense fighting in Misrata.
Now we're going to cross over to our correspondent Natalie Carney in New York. The first session since the downgrade. Tell us, how are investors there reacting?
Well, it's definitely been a very busy weekend here across America. Of course, we've got the S&P downgrade. Then we had the rather public fight between the S&P and the Treasury. We also had the ECB mention that they were going to start buying bonds in Spain and Italy. So there's a lot for investors to digest come open. And as you mentioned, we're already down 2-3% only moments after the opening bell. So we are expecting quite a steep decline, quite a steep sell-off throughout this trading session.
So looking ahead, will Treasuries remain a safe haven in all this uncertainty?
Well, Timothy Geithner, of course, the head of the U.S. Treasury, came out right after the announcement and basically to reassure investors that Treasuries still are a safe bet. And of course, last week we saw after the debt deal was signed by President Barack Obama that Treasuries rallied, prices went up and yields went down.
Natalie Carney reporting from New York.
I am now joined by Natalie Carney, our correspondent in New York. So what can we expect them to decide today, Natalie?
Well, there's going to be a lot of consultations between all members of the Security Council in regards to the humanitarian concerns that are plaguing Somalia at the moment. Now, let's not forget it's been 27 years since the UN has declared famine, and that was in Ethiopia back in the 80s. It was very symbolic to see current President Barack Obama stand side by side with former President George W. Bush here at the ceremonies at the 10th anniversary of September 11th.
And for more on what has been arranged in New York, we earlier spoke to our correspondent there, Natalie Carney.
Well, of course, there will be a number of religious ceremonies held throughout the city, as well those that want to remember people through art. There will be a lot of art exhibitions, specifically showcasing pieces of memorabilia from different makeshift shrines, as well those missing persons posters will also be on display, which completely covered Manhattan in the days and weeks and months following September 11th, 2001. But what is most remarkable about this particular ceremony is that it will be taking place within the memorial itself. That memorial will open up tomorrow morning here in New York.
Why are the Republicans opposed to it?
Poverty in this country has unfortunately reached levels that haven't been seen in quite a few years. The middle class really is eroding. I mean, as the saying goes, the cliche goes, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer.
We spoke to our correspondent Natalie Carney in New York. She summarized the main points of the Security Council's briefing.
The briefing lasted about 2 hours with Mr. Al-Khatib basically saying that he was trying to convince the foreign minister and Libya's prime minister to accept direct talks with the rebels and a ceasefire. Now, he met with these two particular Libyan personnel on Saturday in Tripoli. He's come back and basically saying that the search for a political solution, as you just heard from him, is regrettably still distant. So there must be some sort of forward momentum to take place, but it's hard to say what that's going to be yet.